Hello there, and welcome to the season 1 finale of the Pretty Chill podcast. It's me, John, on planet Earth in Encinitas in this cozy little studio, reporting live. Feeling pretty bittersweet about the end of the season 1. It couldn't have went better in my opinion. I loved all the guests that came in. I love that we were able to shoot them all here in the studio to have a nice uniform look, and I think that's really special. So next season, we'll see. I'd still prefer it all to be here in person. I mean, I've always had this wild idea to have like a van that I build like a podcast studio in, and I can like cruise around and do some interviews there. So anything is possible, but as far as season 1 goes, couldn't be happier. Thank you all for listening and all your comments and feedback. That really means a lot to me. One thing that was I took as a compliment, but you can maybe count it as a criticism of the show, is I had a few people saying, John, we want to hear more. We want you to talk more. And yes, thank you. That's a compliment for sure. But this is all this is a big deal and a big practice for me. I've never been one to talk a lot. I've been, I don't want to say isolated. I've been very independent and don't want to say shy, but I kind of just try to make my words count, I guess, is one way to put it. My family, we didn't all sit at the dinner table and go around and share everything. We kind of just all did our own thing. So it's funny, as I edited the podcast, and I would notice sometimes with this guest, I was a little on the quiet side and maybe more timid or not as comfortable. And then over here, I was very comfortable and way looser and way more talkative. So this is all just part of the growth. This is like the first time I've been on camera, and it's just part of the growth. So I think season 2, I can only be more comfortable. Season 3, and as we go on. So be ready for that, whether you want that or not. A couple other quick updates. I think last time I did an intro, I was 1 foot out the door on the way to Hawaii. So Rebekka and I went there for 10 days for our birthdays. I turned 44. She turned the big 40. My birthday was actually the day of the big earthquake and tsunami. So we had that to deal with. Yeah, there was a lot of panic on the island. We both felt safe where we were, so we just hunkered down and really just weren't worried about it. And thank God, nothing happened. But it was something I'll remember for my birthday forever. And then once I got back, it's been a pretty busy stretch. With work, I did a live event over the weekend, some podcast stuff. We did a live stream in here. I've been in and out of the studio filming other things, but things are good and solid and smooth. Leading up to this week, here in a couple days, I'm actually going up to Washington State, where I'm from, and I feel like I had mentioned this maybe a couple times on the podcast, but last year I inherited about 30 acres of what I call mossy awesomeness in the Pacific Northwest. It's on a river, like huge river bank. It's got huge trees and moss. Those like the standard like Pacific Northwest forest photos with like the huge evergreens and the moss, and like that's what it is. It's like this mini rainforest, and it's a really special place for me. And I've been noticing that the podcasts that I'm listening to and the books that I'm reading, these are more geared towards land stewardship and forestry. And I feel like this is, and I mentioned this on the podcast this year, that like my acts of service they're not up to par. So I feel like I'm like trying to like overcompensate and just really try to nurture this forest as best I can. So I'm talking to all the people. I'm learning so much, and it's so enjoyable. So anyway, I'm going up there for 2 weeks. This is a 2-week chunk that I set aside earlier this year, and it was a non-negotiable. I just wanted this time open to be up in Washington on my land and take a break. And this was probably the strongest boundary, like 2-week boundary that I've ever set. Maybe people have been wanting to come in and, well, can you shoot these days? And normally I would always adjust, but not this time. It's very special time for me to be up there. So I'm heading out in a couple of days. I'll be up there for a couple of weeks, and the the first goal is just to, rest, do some forest bathing, get in the river, and just walk around in the forest. I've been up a few times and I've learned quite a bit, but I'm trying to figure out what to do with the land. There's, when I first got it, I was like, oh my God, I want to build like the coolest cabin. And I was like, well, maybe I could build multiple cabins and rent them out. And then I was like, no, let's just leave it wild. So I've been just, ping ponging ideas. And then I've even had talks with the county, and this is a whole thing too. This is, I don't know if you've seen Parks and Recreation, but I feel like I've channeled like my biggest Ron Swanson energy when I'm dealing with the county. Cause I just feel like a place like that, it's just wild. Let me do what I want. But no, this is a very, very, this is a very challenging zone that I'm in because it's near the river and some other streams. So yeah, it'll all come together, and all these things that I'm thinking about with the land, and even the cool story of my family and my grandpa, who is quite the pioneer and acquired this land. I just feel like there's so much potential for this to be a cool YouTube channel, and because this is what I like to watch when I'm home, is people on homesteads, or they're building a cabin, or they're just like figuring out, what's next, and they acquire some land, and so I'm like really into this. And when I was in Hawaii, I was just writing on the iPad and just came up with like a cool, what I think is a cool idea for like a 4-part mini series. So I'm going to bring a bunch of gear up, and I already have the episode scripted out, and I'm just going to see where that goes. And I think had I not done the podcast, I don't know if I'd be doing this. This was like the launching off point of like, well, I can have fun with these projects too. I've been producing everyone else's stuff for many years, and I just want to start telling my own stories. So here's the podcast. Hopefully the YouTube works out, and then the podcast can keep going as well. So that's where I'm at. And then when I get back, it's just kind of more of the same, all good stuff. I feel really good about the space that I've created for myself. Trying not to be as burnt out as I've been the last few years. So creating space and taking time for myself to rest and all of that. And then also like scheduling in my next forest trips. I think this is something that I want to do at least quarterly, go up for at least a week and just be up there and see what's going on. And then also during this fall, I'm going to be recording the next season for the podcast. I've already recorded a couple of episodes and just going to keep that going. So I think season 2 will probably be released probably in November or December sometime. That sounds about right. That'll give me a couple months just to kind of break and then slowly start getting it back online. But I learned so much from season 1 that I think season 2 is going to be really, really awesome and smooth. Well, let's get into today's interview for the season 1 finale. This is obviously a very special person to me. This is my girlfriend and partner, Rebekka Mars. Kind of just wanted her to close out the season. She has a podcast, the Modern Mindfulness podcast, and I go on that from time to time, and she titles those episodes Relationship Riff, where we kind of just go back and forth and chat about what's going on. And I had the thought of maybe doing something similar for my podcast where, for those of you that want to hear me talk more, we can, riff a bit about what's going on. But it didn't really go that way. And I'm happy about that. Not because I didn't want to share and all that stuff, but I feel like Rebekka's done, she's been doing her podcast for 5 years. She's always interviewing. And I felt like when I was finishing editing the episode the other day, I was just like, this is a really solid interview for her. Like, I felt like I had this very special vantage point and know what are the special questions that I can ask her to really talk about, what really highlights her attributes in her character. So I don't think it could have went any better. I'm really excited for you to listen to some of the things that she's into, the yoga, the spirituality, this somatic healing, which is starting to get more popular now. We go into all of that, and yeah, it's just a really good chat and a good intro for her on the show. So let's just get into it. Please enjoy this conversation with Rebekka Mars. All right, welcome back to the Pretty Chill Podcast, the PCP. Today we are chilling with a very special guest, my lovely partner, Rebekka Mars. Rebekka, how are we feeling?
I'm so excited.
I really want to take today as an opportunity to introduce you to my audience and also just for people in general. You would fit the bill of the type of guests I'm trying to get on the show. People out there doing really cool stuff, trying to make the world a better place and all these things. So how's this all sound?
Sounds perfect.
So you do quite a few things. You kind of started with yoga, you do life coaching, you're into somatics and some other fun stuff that I'm sure we're going to get to here in a minute. But like when people ask you, oh, so what do you do? Like, what's your answer to that? I know that's a stressful question for a lot of people that have many things that they're interested in and passionate in. And this answer might be different than what you maybe said last week or what you'll say next week. But right now, as we sit here today, what is that answer?
Well, the timing of life today, I would say that I am an aliveness coach, which is a word that I have been using for some time. And what is an aliveness coach would probably be the next question. And that is really using all of the things that you're loosely, vaguely mentioning that I do to help people really feel alive. And to me, feeling alive is not just feeling excited and just like, woo, like living life. It's really honoring the fullness that this life experience is. And so that brings in things like grief and sadness and those lower moments that we have, and just being able to be present with them and helping people figure out how to do that for themselves. Everyone's going to be so different. But then also realizing that all of this is the gift. And so to be fully alive is, to honor the spectrum of it all. And in that, then I'll bring in, I am a yoga teacher and I'm a meditation teacher and I'm a life coach and I'm a somatic experiencing practitioner and I am a soon to be Reiki level 1. It's just all the things. But I think it's all for the sake of helping people feel most alive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great. And I kind of want to spend a minute just talking about your yoga evolution. You started back in the day. Like I always look at you as one of these like master yoga teachers. I feel like there's quite a few people that are in and out of yoga, whether that's taking the classes or even like I know a lot of people that have got the teacher training or have these aspirations to be a yoga teacher. You got yours, what, 15, 16, 17 years ago or whatever, more, she says. Can you kind of just describe what the yoga scene, as far as like what you were seeing, literally seeing, and also what you thought yoga was at that time in your body compared to what it is now for you?
Yeah, it's kind of a loaded question and definitely a loaded answer, but I'll do my best to keep it a little distilled down. But it all began when I was born. Just kidding. But that's kind of how I have to start the yoga explanation because, some may say this doesn't matter at all, but I do think that the fact that my mom was practicing yoga the night that I came 7 weeks early to this world did start something in me. And then even as a little kid, I was doing yoga, and a lot of people these days can't necessarily say that. And so I do know that that's something special that I hold, that I literally have been doing this my whole life, even though sure, as an adult, what does that matter? And as a teacher, does that matter? But back to me believing that, this full spectrum of life is it. I do think everything that we experience in our bodies is a part of then what we're bringing to life. To know that I've been experiencing yoga in my body since I was born, I think that really is some foundation that I hold inside of me. And growing up, it was a constant. I went to yoga with my mom. I can remember in high school, and I'm from a very small town in the middle of Missouri where, as people may guess, yoga was not the thing. I don't even know if my classmates knew what yoga was. And my parents did, though, because they were from the era where it was a thing that landed in the States and certain groups of people were into that type of spiritual practice. And yeah, being the black sheep that I was. And I grew up just doing it and not really knowing why and going with mom. Then I went to college in St. Louis, Missouri, and there was a yoga studio right across the street from the campus, which now I'm sure every college offers yoga. But back in 2003, there was no yoga on site. And I would go over, and it was a studio that was very traditional, like what I was used to. And it's a lot of older women wearing sweatpants. And I'd show up, and I was like 19 years old. And so it's just something that's always been with me. And so then I never thought I would teach yoga. But after college, I ended up working at a gym. I was also a personal trainer for a stint, had this passion for wellness. And I'll never forget the moment when this very early mentor said, "Why are you not in a yoga teacher training?" And everyone at the gym, all the trainers, like, "Why are you not teaching yoga? You're the yoga girl." And did not see it at all in myself. But I ended up in a training. And at the time, I did do a training that's called Yoga Fit. So it wasn't like I went to India. People were doing that for sure. And this is back in 2008, I think. And I even wrote my college, what I call thesis, but I was a creative writing major and we had to write this big paper. And I wrote about yoga coming west. And so I always had this thing in me. And in that paper, I can remember mentioning like yoga, Brazilian booty, something or other that was popular at the time, and just all these ways that people were taking yoga and turning it into these kind of weird things, like fitness things that it just didn't feel totally right to me. Is it wrong? Not necessarily, but to me, there was just something. So I've always held that really traditional approach, like really wanting to honor tradition. And so as time has rolled on, I've taught in many places. I've taught all the styles. I've done a 500-hour training and have I don't even know how many thousands and thousands of hours of teaching and training with everyone, all different styles. I always consider myself like a yoga mutt. I think there's, just interesting parts of it all. But now that we're here in the Mecca of yoga, Southern California, the US Mecca, it does feel kind of different. And I knew coming out here that I was going to land here and just see how I fit in. And it's been a bit of a challenge because everyone's a yoga teacher. Yoga is everywhere. I think it's important because I think it's probably needed right now on planet Earth just to have a lot of people that are able to spread yoga however they can. So I'm always reminding myself of that. But I also see a lot of just kind of showy yoga or people just getting the certificate and they've done yoga for like 2 years and then all of a sudden, if even, and all of a sudden they're becoming a yoga teacher. And to me, teaching is also something that is just deep in me. And I don't think you can teach that quickly. You can, but it's more of like a guiding versus a teaching place. And I'm always wanting to teach people. And so, I don't even know where to stop myself in this thread here, but yeah, it's changed a lot. But I'm now just trying to really honor that it's needed in whatever capacity, but also looking for the people who are teaching and really into learning and embodying versus just running through the motions.
I was curious to ask this, and this might be a silly question, but I feel like anybody or a lot of people that I talk to that have been on some sort of spiritual path or some sort of path, a lot of their stories start with, "Well, I was in a yoga class." Like, that what is it that could ignite somebody on? This isn't just like, "Oh, I was in a yoga class and it changed my mood for the day." This is like, I was in a yoga class, this happened, and I set out on this path for the next 5 years. Like, what happens
Mm,
for these people?
that my whole body has chills right now. Like, that's a really great question. And it's really special. And I think it's partly why I love yoga. Like, I can feel tears coming to my eyes. And back to what I shared about people just sharing yoga, I think it's reminding me that the power is in the yoga practice itself. The teacher is the facilitator. The teacher brings the teachings of yoga. And it's not about always the teacher. The teacher is a person, but the teacher is delivering. And so, what's special when someone lands in a yoga class, it could be a class in a gym. It could be a class I used to teach office yoga way back. We'd be in this little room. You can have the yoga experience in any setting, in any clothes, with or without a yoga mat. And because yoga has been around for thousands of years, it's one of the only things that I can think of that has been around that long and is still so relevant. And it's just so timeless. And there's so many ancient practices that are, but yoga is like one of the ones that really brings in mind and body and soul. And so I think for a lot of us, modern day humans to sit down and do something is a good gateway in because we want to do things. but we're human beings. And so I think what happens in yoga that there's always stillness. Even if it's short, even if the teacher doesn't provide a lot of pausing and slowing down, it's slower than the regular pace that people are used to. There's this insert of pause and space, and then the infusion of yoga itself, which is, again, thousands of years of just wisdom and connecting to higher energies and higher consciousness and all of that. And it's a pretty big deal. So I think what's cool about yoga being as popular as it is, that it's a very approachable practice now. It wasn't always that way, especially depending on where you lived. But yeah, for people to be able to plop down in an enclosed, safe space with someone, or even just a room, a space that is holding these layers of what yoga is, just energetically transmitting change. And I saw a really great reel on Instagram earlier, and I don't know who it was. It was an Indian woman sharing that the thing with yoga that people misunderstand is that they think yoga is supposed to make them feel really good. And really, yoga, I don't know if she said supposed to, if we want to get into the words, but it's like yoga actually is designed to make you uncomfortable. Like it's working if you're uncomfortable. And I wrote my friend, I was like, this is kind of making me, laugh because yesterday I really went deep with my class. I was saying some stuff that was more of like real yoga. And most of them left with like these different sort of looks. They weren't beaming,
Mhm.
but I had to remind myself, similar to what that reel was saying, like the yoga works when you're a little stirred up and you won't stay stirred up. And so for people to feel that and then just feel something different for once, and it's in your soul that you feel it. And I think with the right awareness and again, the right place and space and time in people's lives, that could be the reason why it's such a beginning for their next step, because something that has just been so programmed within them has now had a chance to be opened up, and this new field of yoga comes in, and while it stirs things up, it also can redirect into a more soul path.
Mhm. Yeah, I bet it takes years and years and years to basically custom design the yoga flow, like you mentioned, the pauses and the cueing, and just like a millisecond can make all the difference. And I
Mhm.
know in your classes, one big thing is the music, and uh, we're both like huge music fans. Music always on, and different music for different things. Can you talk a little bit about what inspires you to put music in your classes? Like, how do you go about coming up with your playlist for that specific class? Does
Mm.
it depend on your mood? Does it depend on the day of the week that the class is? What do you what can you say about
Yes,
your
and yes.
playlist?
All the above, yeah. I can remember way back, I had a cubicle job when I started teaching yoga. I was working a 9 to 5, in a field that I never thought I'd be in, insurance, auto insurance with State Farm, and I had this cubicle, but at the same time, I was starting my yoga teaching journey, and I can remember on this little State Farm sheet of paper, I taught, I don't remember, a couple times a week, and I was outlining the songs, and this is when you had to burn CDs or use a CD. I was hauling boom boxes around, but I would take time, and yoga teachers now have it so easy with Spotify, but I had to burn CDs, and so I was putting a ton of intention at the beginning. I mean, I do it now, it's just so different, but I would, like, map out the minutes to what part of the class it was, the beginning, and just knowing music, and I grew up with music-loving parents, so it was just, like, around me and in me, just another one of those things. I was a musician as a kid, in band and all this stuff, and so I think that, I there was no way around it for me once I experienced music in yoga at some point. I don't think growing up I was experiencing the music so much as just the yoga and the classes I was going to, but somewhere along the way in that initial training and where yoga was at then in time, music was a thing. And there were some yoga musicians, and a lot of it was sort of tribal drumming or soft music. But somewhere along the way, too, when I would travel, I would go take classes in California and Colorado where things were kind of, I think, a little more, cool and hip than mid Missouri. And I can remember taking classes in Boulder actually, and they were using like real music. So, anyway, somewhere I got permission to really get creative with making playlists. And now, when I sit down and really make a fresh playlist, I have to be in the mood. And it does depend on the class and the style, of course, that I'm teaching. And I really love when I have a regular group of people. So I get to know the people, and I can already imagine who's probably going to be in this class, at least, 50-50. Probably I'll know some of the people, and just knowing people too. It's just another energetic way of meeting people and letting them feel music and music that I believe in. And I'm always really careful with songs with words, songs with messages that are not so positive. I can remember some of my teachers really bringing that to light of like, be aware of what songs you're playing. Because although I'm very much a music person and we both are, and we've talked about that, like we just like beats. It's not always the lyrics, but lyrics and words are carrying messaging. Sometimes it's subliminal, subconscious stuff. So people may not listen to the song, but it's still energy that's being infused into the class. So there's a time and place for some like fun, dirty hip hop and whatnot in a yoga class, because I still think that you can hold a very spiritual space in that way. But for me, I love just tossing in anything and everything. And I have hundreds of playlists at this point on Spotify and just pull stuff together. But I've got my go-tos. I've got the world music. I've got the, East Forest style music. I've got the fun songs with words. Lately I found a couple 90s songs that I've been using, but I'm very intentional with where in the class I'm putting it. I know it's going to match where their bodies are at that point. There's an easy arc without going into the details of a beginning of class. You're just warming the body up. The middle of class, you're a little more in it. And then the end, you're calming down. So the music should follow that arc. So a dream job someday would be to maybe put music to movies, as I've said, or just really live in that world of music because I do love it so much. But it is a fun part of teaching that sometimes I have to make sure that's not all the energy I'm putting into the class is just the playlist. But I actually don't know that that would be a wrong thing at this point in time either.
Yeah, I think that could be overlooked how important that playlist is. And like you mentioned, if you're in any sort of anything where there's a beginning, middle, and end, you have to tailor that music to that, whether it's a ceremony or a yoga class or a movie. It's funny because that was always my dream job also. Maybe we haven't talked about that before. It's like I've always paid really close attention to movie soundtracks. I like collected them, all the CDs when I was younger, and I was just like, I just feel like I could be really good at this. So that's funny. I wanted to move a little bit more into your coaching. You work a lot with clients on, this has evolved also during the time that I've known you, but kind of what can you say about when you first started taking on like one-on-one clients? What were you working with them on? And then what has that kind of evolved into recently?
Yeah, it began when I was teaching, and I could remember, again, specific memory of this gal saying, I wish I could just tuck you in my pocket at the end of a yoga class, because I was saying things and I was so inspired. At the time, I was in St. Louis, and Katie Brower and Danny Arguetti, who were teachers out here that I was studying with, they just had such beautiful ways of weaving in themes, and many other great teachers too. I always loved when teachers could say a little bit more than just the physical posture stuff while we were in the physical postures. I know that's something that is really cool for me to reflect back on and realize I didn't start teaching that way. Those of you that might know me as a yoga teacher or yoga teachers, I started just like anybody, just breath and movement, but to weave in a really cool theme and inspiring lingo. And so enough of those conversations were happening after teaching yoga. And it was back in 2010, I guess, or 2009, 2008, I guess, somewhere in there. Coaching was a thing. Life coaching is not that old, but it was still new at the time. I didn't know about it. And then somehow, actually, I do remember I was on a flight, random trip. I went to see a college roommate, Denver flight, and this lady, go figure, universe, put me beside a life coach. And she told me she was a life coach. And I was like, a life coach? What's that? And so then that really drove me into finding coaches. And I realized I did know people who were coaching. And so it all started then when I was just in this place of having really deep conversations after yoga, weaving in like life stuff that was rooted in yoga, but then individuals wanting more individualized conversations. And I was like, what do you call this? Well, it's not me teaching yoga, though it kind of is, but it was more of helping people in their own self journey, capital S self, that was happening on a yoga mat. They wanted it off of their yoga mat. I started working with some business coaches at the time and had some programs that were still rooted in yoga. And I made an acronym I was just remembering today of Your Own Greatness Amplified. So that was the name of my first program, Your Own Greatness Amplified Yoga. And so I was helping people amplify their greatness. And I had only a few clients. So when I say I was coaching at the time, it was still not that many, but I really loved having one-on-one conversations. And it has evolved, as I moved to Florida and was teaching there. And then I'd start to play with having some coaching conversations around meditation and yoga. And it still was, I never knew who or what my niche was, but people would just know if they wanted to have those one-on-one talks. So it still was threaded with spirituality, yoga. Sometimes someone needed more of like a physical coach, like a
Mhm.
well-being. So I had a background in personal training and all this stuff.
Mhm.
But now it's evolving even more into this deeper self-awakening and empowerment and finding your voice. If I were to
Mhm.
look at my private clients now, it's a lot of moving through transitions in life, finding the courage to make big moves in that, learning how to express.
Mhm.
So it's really evolved as we all do and as everything does with time. And now it's aliveness.
Mhm. This might be a hard question to answer, but the people that you're working with right now, is there some sort of like common universal thread? Like, is there something that like that you're just like this whole everybody that's coming in, they just kind of need this same thing? Is there any like universal nudge that folks are needing? Whether that's like, if you watch the news and all the bad news, and then just all the stresses that we're under and all the pressures that we're under, is there anything that you're seeing where people just need to relax a bit or be easier on themselves or anything like that that you're noticing?
Well, yes, definitely what you just said. A lot of the people I attract are those high achievers or the people, growing up, I was like that stay up all night to finish a paper and make
Mhm.
straight A's type of energy. And as an adult, what does that look like? Just like go, 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 not knowing how to stop. Things are never quite good enough. So you just don't know when to stop. So, yes. And as you were saying that, I was also thinking forwards, more somatic, more spirit.
Mhm.
And so when I say that, it's getting people even more in their bodies because now we're at this era where people know how to like move and exercise. Everyone gets it. Like they get that they need to move their bodies.
Mhm.
But to be in your body is different than moving your body. So I'm finding that I'm meeting people. They may not know that yet, but I know what they need more
Mhm.
than they do in that regard of like they're just not fully feeling.
Mhm.
And so I'm finding people that are like right there and they're ready for help and they're ready for more. And then I'm able to help them feel internally what's going on because that's really where the wisdom lives. That's
Mhm.
learning how to trust your gut. That's learning how to open up to things like spirituality, whatever you want to call it. It's really opening to some greater connection. And that's also, as you know, where I've been at a lot. And so I believe we attract who we are and what we are. And, you might find this in your clients too, where, wow, like this person is like so aligned with what I'm doing right now, what I'm feeling, or just little things like that. You get these little pings. And so at some point, I did start to realize in the last couple of years of like the people that are attracted to me are definitely me too. And I'm right on that journey as well. But it's like feel more to grow and expand more. You want something, it's right there, you're ready to take action, but you're still like needing to either clear energy out of the body, connect to some greater trust in life, surrendering to that. So I do think that as a general collective too, that's pretty much where we are.
Mhm. And a lot of what you described is somatic healing, correct? Like, how
Yeah.
would you so there's this new, I don't even want to call it a specialty, but it is a special situation, a special healing ability that you have now with the somatic training that you've done. Why don't you talk a little bit about the training that you've done and what exactly is somatic healing?
Yeah. Some people out there might know about somatic experiencing. It's kind of cool. I think you even said when you were at your latest doctor checkup, just like
Yeah.
the primary care guy was like, you should try somatic experiencing.
Yeah, well, he was like, I forget what he was trying to nudge me to go see a couple of different specialists, and it's just the usual suspects. And then I saw a somatic expert on there, and I was just like, had to do a double take. I was like, oh, good, that's great.
Yeah. Yeah. It was so cool to hear you say that. And I know that's happening slowly where people, they're hearing the word somatic and even more specifically, somatic experiencing is one of, if people are wanting more just right away, if this is all you hear, it's like, check out somatic experiencing. I think the program is the most thorough. For most people, it's a 3-year program. Took me 4 years because of life. And it's really not just the most thorough, but it's making sure that, like I was sort of naming earlier, that the people going through it are embodying this change at least a little bit more than just learning it in their head, and they have to go through taking time to integrate because you can fly through a training and think you're done, but if you're not taking time to really live it and digest it. So I think that somatic experiencing does a great job with that, and I'm sure there are other really great programs out there, but I landed in that one, and so now I am an official somatic experiencing practitioner. And what that means, it basically was a study that was showing back in I might mess up the time here, but 70s or so, 60s, 70s, soldiers with PTSD weren't fully healing through talk therapy, basically, and realizing that there has to be another way to help address some of these symptoms that people were carrying in their bodies. And so Peter Levine came up with somatic experiencing, and he's still so incredible at what he does. And he's trained so many people, and people have taken it and turned it into their own thing. But it's really looking at the body as an organism holding life, and how do you clear it? And specifically with somatic experiencing, because maybe people have heard the word, and somatic healing can be a lot of stuff. You can be shaking and doing somatic breath work and all this stuff. And some people swear by all those things, and that's great, whatever works for you. But for me, that wasn't always, I'm not like that big person. And when I started studying it, it made the most sense that we actually can be very slow and give the body time to express what's trapped inside.
Mhm.
And partly for me, it's because I know that I was in like a freeze mode. So there's fight or flight, there's freeze, there's fawning. And so I was never like a fight or flighter. And you can, dive into the nervous system and realize that, we all have this healthy flow, ideally, into a fight or flight mode, into a sympathetic mode, and then out of it. So for me to say I never had it, that's not true because we all have it. But I was not by nature like I want to fight somebody, I want to, maybe fly away, but I was more of a freeze person. And so to help unstick myself, I had to slow down enough to feel what was going on. If you're constantly fighting or flighting, it's very hard to feel the things that are just asking for space inside you. So that's my angle with it. There'll be people that'll use somatic experiencing in all kinds of ways, but I'm learning that I really like helping people feel safe enough to slow down and feel what's going on in their body. And it's really cool because you don't have to go into the storyline with somatic experiencing. Sometimes you don't even mention what's going on. So a lot of times the way I've been using it is like, just tell me what's going on in life right now. What's been challenging you? What do you feel like I can help you with? And just after a few sentences, I can start to see the body expressing things. And part of it's my own gift of just tracking energy. And then that's really where it's like, stop talking. I don't always say that depending on the person, but it's like, okay, so what do you notice in your body? And so I've seen people use this a lot, and people are, oh, what do you notice in your body? But I think that part of the way the healing happens is feeling safe with the person you're with. And so while you can do a lot of this stuff on your own or in a group setting, it can be very powerful in a group setting. I know for me, I really enjoy one on one and really getting to hold that space, and stuff that people haven't been able to clear in years doing all kinds of other therapies. They're able to start to feel it and shift it. And it's just so cool to see, even just after a few weeks, people having like breakthroughs that they just have been asking for forever and couldn't find it through a lot of like talk therapies or therapies that are more cognitive, which they all have a place. But what's missing oftentimes is bringing your body into it, which also is what I've been all about. And I knew for years I was saying embodiment, embodiment. And so now through this somatic experiencing, I'm like, this is embodiment. This is the next level. Yoga is still there for me, but I really love taking people to that deeper place of stillness in the body and letting things move from that place from the inside out.
Mhm. As you've been growing your somatic coaching, I remember that over the last few years, you would be like, yeah, I told them, well, how does that feel in the body? And it's almost like you were just shocked that people didn't know how to answer that question. They're just like, well, what do you mean? Can you explain that, the importance of that question, and maybe what you're expecting someone to like feel? Like what sort of answer, uh
Yeah,
I don't even know how to
I
ask
know.
this.
I know
Like,
what you mean. And it's like, it is almost a trick question to a lot of grown-ups.
because you did I remember you, like, there's a few times where you're like, I asked them, where does that feel in their body? And they're unable to do it. They just like would tell a story then. And I'm there listening and supporting you. And then eventually I was just like, well, shit, let me make sure I know how to do that. And then, because you did it to me a couple times, and I'm like, okay, I feel something online there, but not like bright lights,
Mhm.
obvious. So I guess when you ask that question to your clients, what kind of answer are you like either expecting or hoping to hear there?
Yeah, I mean, that's such a good question. And to anyone out there, clients and anybody, it's like, it's okay. And this is part of the coolness of the journey.
Yeah.
And it's for me too. I don't know that I always had the vocabulary to describe what I'm feeling in my body. It was more through yoga and
Mhm.
realizing that my main mentors were also trained in somatic experiencing. So I was getting it through a lot of my yoga. So it actually was very already there for me by the time I realized what somatic experiencing was and what somatic stuff was. It already had been a thing that I'd been practicing unknowingly. And yogis, though, I do find are better feelers. And so those people that have been able to move with their breath, move their body with their breath in a yoga practice, especially, they have more access, which is also back to the power of yoga. You don't even realize that's what you're doing when you go to yoga. I don't know anyone who is going to yoga like, I just want to improve my body vocabulary. Maybe, but yoga offers that feeling state. Again, you need to have space, you need to have time to slow down to even be like, what am I feeling? And it's important because there's emotional intelligence involved. We are just so fixated on intellect in our Western world. I think we all can agree that's just where we've been living and we're slowly shifting, but we're still very much there. But if you look at the body holding life itself, every moment in your life, even pre birth, is stored somewhere in your body, not just your mind, but it's the body, it's the nervous system, the mind body. And so, why not get to know this amazing vehicle? And also, your intuition lives in your body, it's not in your head. Your heart is in your body, not in your head. These are the places that so many wisdoms of the centuries have been steering humans back towards. Get into your heart, feel compassion, get into the gut, the wisdom, the intuition that's going to bridge you. And there's power in the mind as well. But if you're so congested by thinking and living in the head, you're just missing out on this huge, amazing resource. And part of it's just what I've always felt of, the body is the vehicle for us to move through this life in, the body is the home. And to reframe some of these things. So then to ask, what do I feel? I mean, you're just missing out if you're not able to mention that. You're going to also need to listen to your body. I mean, how many times have people heard that? Listen to your body, like listen to your gut. But if you don't know how to do that, you're not able to get that feeling. Even listen to the heart. People will feel the heart and they might describe it as heartache, but to even get to know that at another level of like, well, what am I feeling when I feel heartache? What am I feeling when I feel love? And it's just again, the body opening up to new channels of energy and awareness is huge. And so it all starts with being able to feel that, to name it. And the trickery is not having vocabulary, like literal words to say what you're feeling. And that's a challenge. And there's a lot of great vocabulary lists out there. I've seen if you look up somatic vocabulary now online, some people have made some fabulous lists, really any adjectives, and it's stuff that you would never think of. And I was telling a few people lately, it's like imagine asking a 5-year-old what their body feels like at a certain time. And they probably are going to have an easier time describing because it's also our adult conditioning of not being imaginative and not using creative thinking. And to even feel okay saying, like, well, my legs feel like they're clouds right now, or like my hands feel like I have flowers growing out the fingertips of them, or my hands feel heavy and blue and like murky, or like whatever words. I'm just spitting stuff out. Little kids would probably do that a lot easier. And so it's also just realizing and cutting our adult selves some slack too, of like, it's okay if you're not able to name feeling in the body. And if this is like sounding like a next level of self knowing that you're ready to step into, to feel is to heal, and we're all healing from something.
Yeah, I was going to ask, you had just mentioned it, like my hands feel blue or whatever, because it can be like a color, right?
Totally.
You can also kind of see, can you like see colors and
Yeah.
sounds, and it could be anything, right?
Yeah.
Like you,
Yeah.
when you ask that question, it could be literally anything.
Yeah.
And you can go from there, I guess.
Oh yeah, totally. It's well, especially with somatic experiencing, and I haven't studied other, I don't know what other modalities of somatic work, what they're saying. But with somatic experiencing, there's these different channels that open up. And for some people, it is very sensory where they're going to name things like physical feelings, like my leg feels tingly right now. It feels warm. It feels red. It feels whatever. For some people, it's going to be more of this like meaning where you ask them to name like, what does your right knee feel like right now? And they might go into like some sort of story, maybe not necessarily the storyline of something in time, but it could be more of a descriptive thing like that, like they're telling a story. Some people are going to have more imagery. Some people will see colors, or they will even see images of things. I had this really cool session with a client a couple weeks ago where we've now known each other a year. And at the very beginning, she could not say how she felt. She would stare at me and didn't even know what to say. And that's so normal at first. And it's okay. That's like how people are starting this somatic journey. And I can remember she just like didn't know. And just a couple weeks ago, she was describing this feeling in her belly and it like lava and this fire. And we'd had one other session where she was describing some fire. And it wasn't so much a feeling. She started to see yellow come in and that the lava was starting to be replaced by this warm yellow. That's not necessarily sensation. That's like a color. She's having this image of lava. So everyone's going to be different. And some people have more of an image channel. Some people have more of a sensation channel, a meaning channel. There's a few others, but
So if somebody has lava, or let's say, where does it feel in your body? Oh, my right fingers are tingling. Is that like a launching off point for you to now start working, or is that just like a tracking situation?
yeah, the latter in my case, and
Okay.
this is a good point to bring up just because there are a lot of these like nothing against breath work or somatic shaking, all these like regulation practices. And I had a very profound somatic breath work experience in January. So I definitely give credit to that. I think when I was in Mexico and Sayulita, like I reflect on that, like that was totally a good release for me. But a lot of these practices, if you're not aware of what's going on, they just kind of ping pong the energy around. Like maybe you shake a little out, but until you get to the root of what's in there, there's regulation and there's healing in my eyes. And so the regulation stuff is so important if you need in a moment to figure out how to like calm something down in the body or release, shake, have temporary relief, feel more regulated, but to release fully or to like heal the thing. So if someone names something in their hand, like we're getting somewhere, looking out for the urge to just shake it out. And this is what I find a lot too. People want to like move into how do I release it? And they think because maybe they've heard of like the shaking or the breath work, or you need to just like let the body. But a lot of times where I'm at, especially with the people I attract, that tingle in the hand, we just want to let it be a tingle in the hand. So it's more the tracking, like you named. And I've had many people, as this stuff comes up, they're like, well, now I'm gonna move it. You don't do anything. That's your personality coming on to try to, fix the body or heal the body. Let the body, it's like this magnificent organism that is designed to heal. The body's designed to self heal. Like you cut your finger, it heals. So we have to get ourselves out of the way. So it's really for me more about tracking sensation. And if there's a point where it's like my body wants my hand to like move, like it's tingling and now my hand wants to like my fingers want to stretch, I'm okay with that. But if it's like, well, I think I want to stand up and shake. Well, I don't want you to think anything. So there's just this really neat relationship building practice with the energy in the body and learning how to hold it and let it just do its own thing versus we need to do anything to it.
Mhm. And how do you advance your skills as a somatic practitioner? I mean, obviously, you'll have plenty of clients coming, and you're already working with plenty of people. Are there like masters in this field that you're like really just following their work, or how do you see your next like few years in this arena going?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think for anyone to, move to that next level of mastery and what they offer, it's grounding more into themselves and their own. Yeah, I saw a meme the other day of like more people are into like rising, but so many aren't into grounding or something. Like there's this implementation and this like feet on the ground thing that needs to happen, especially in this field of healing and body, mind healing and everything, where there's a lot of those, coaches and healers out there that are just on to the next. And all of a sudden they're at this new level. And I can feel it in my body right away when I see someone, and I know you have that sensory too of like, this isn't real. They're just spitting stuff out. Maybe it will help people, and whatever will help people, I'm for that. However, for me to get more of that mastery, I know I'm probably going to need to go to a silent retreat. I'm going to need to really sit in my own shit and keep working through my stuff to become even more of a vessel of information and safe space holding for my people, because to me, that's even more of it. And what I've loved about all of holding space type of things, I am, the energy of that field. We are when we hold any sort of space, anybody holding space. And so if you have your own friction inside, it's going to be felt. So I know for me to be a better facilitator of whatever, It's going to take my own healing and, being so aware of what I actually need when I start to get a little clogged up, a little triggered. In all honesty, I had a big old wave of grief come through this morning. Like, God, that was inside of me. Like, I need to let that stuff out. So, grief letting and these practices. So, I mean, sure, there's always also people to watch and study. And what's been interesting to track within the somatic experiencing work is like we're doing spiritual work here, but it's not named that at all. And finally, in my advanced trainings, we had some good chats with our main teacher about it. And everyone's so great. They all have different backgrounds and things. But as he was demoing some things, I just had to name, like, what are you doing up there? And it seemed like he was channeling. It seemed like he was really opening himself up. And he said that he was. And so I know for me too, because that's how I'm built. And that's not everyone's going to be that way. Some people are coming at this from more of a cognitive, they're therapists and they're counselors, and they are still going to be a little more present with whatever. But I'm an energetic person and I am connecting to some higher powers myself and holding that field for my client. And so I also see that, although somatic experiencing does not advertise as this like spiritual place, the work that it's doing and that I specifically am using it for is helping people open up to spirit. So for me to be more of a quote master in that, it's also time for me to learn more about that world of the unseen world. What are people tapping into, whether they believe in God or not? It's like there's some other energies around us and available. And I see that in my people. At some point, they just get to this place where their human being personality is like, what is this? Because I think we're all spiritual creatures having this human experience. And so at some point, your human just has had enough. And so I'm ready to like help people go to that level, which I didn't see coming either. But I know in terms of where do I go from here, it's just my own self study and self growth and spiritual practices myself to get to know that space a little better so I can just shine the light and just have like my little flashlight available to lead the way for those that are just right there ready to take the next step too.
Yeah, that's actually the next thing that I wanted to talk to you about, as I know you've been playing around in these spiritual realms lately. I don't know if I've mentioned this on the pod yet, but Beck and I both lost our dads a couple of years ago, 10 days apart. My dad died of a heart attack. Not a surprise situation, but still obviously a bummer. Becca's dad had a fall and just couldn't get him back online. So it was something that we both were dealing with at the same time. But I feel like, was that about the time that you kind of cranked up the spiritual realm a little bit more to kind of open up some communication channels, would you say? And like, how was the passing of your dad a couple of years ago? Like, how has that opened up your relationship to like spirit and spiritual realms, and how are you incorporating this into your life right now?
Yeah, I mean, this is a whole other episode, but yeah, I think in hindsight, I could see life preparing me for that phase of life. And in terms of, like I said, aliveness, being alive is also looking at death. And I never really had to look at death too much. I had grandparents, but I was young for my one set. And then, I loved my grandparents, but it's not like they were living next door to me. So I think that the deaths impacted me, no doubt, but not that was it too. I mean, I've just been very fortunate. So to be faced with the death of a parent was for sure an initiation to needing to either, I could like, and I see a lot of humans do this and it's for all the right reasons. It's like just sitting in the loss. But I knew in me, and I'm sure my dad had a role in that of like, I have to believe in something greater than what's right in front of me. I have to believe that life goes on as it does. And I think, again, in hindsight, not only was I prepared through yoga and my own spiritual practices and even the way I was raised, I mean, it was like loosely there. And in yoga, you don't have to believe in the gods and the goddesses, but I know I was always leaning into, praying outwardly and believing that there's some higher power. And this isn't about religion. It's about a higher power. It's about something greater than me in this moment that I can have some trust and faith in. And faith isn't just religion. Faith is believing in just something. And so spirituality to me is that it's whatever avenue gets you into that feeling of being connected to something beyond what meets the eye right here. The unseen world. I don't know when I first really landed in hearing people use that term. And that really is such a good way to describe this stuff too. It's like all around us, there's energy, there's spirit, there's, if I want to go there, there's angels and there's guides and our past loved ones are right there, and signs and synchronicities I've always lived in. And I know my dad too. He would come home and be like, I was thinking of this person and they showed up, and he had them all the time. And so I do think that there is an element, a little bit of just inheriting that from our parents too. And people have different, like a lot of times mediums have family members that were mediums, psychic mediums, and it is sort of passed through the thread of their genetic energetics. And for me, it was definitely the turning point. I even had an astrology reading the day after my dad left this realm, and she like laughed, same one that told us about our Leo thing.
Hmm.
And she was like, oh, like this, no wonder, like you're on this whole new trajectory now, like this day right now on your chart. And it was like literally the day my dad passed. And I didn't tell her that. And she was just like, you are totally, it's this whole new layer of career for you, of being in your purpose for you. So that gave me a little bit more permission to just lean into it. I don't think in that moment I did that, but it was just something that was with me for a little bit of like, I just was drawn towards the mediums, the Teresa Caputos, listening to them, reading Tyler Henry books. And, that was definitely 80%, if not more, of what I was listening to for months after my dad passed. And it was the best thing for my grief. And so, it comes and goes, but it's definitely made me believe in something even more specific than just a higher power. It's made me realize that we do have the guides. And I've spent some time thanking mine for all the times I know they have saved me in the past. Like when we were in Mexico and we did this stuff with Arturo, it was like I didn't really land on any specific. We did this practice with this medium, and some people were having specific family members come in. Some people had, Jesus or whatever other figures like that, like enlightened master type people. And I just felt like my angel's presence were there. And all I could do is feel like this new, super high gratitude. And I was having flashes of moments like in college, in high school, even when, whether it was with like drinking or just doing crazy stuff. I'm like, my God, how did I survive that? And just knowing that there had to be something. I mean, I can think of one specific moment, like the car should have crashed. Like me and my roommate at the time shouldn't, like, I don't even know. And I'm sure listeners out there have those things of like, how did that even happen? And so anyway, through just my own journey, it's just been like, how could I not believe in something greater than? And now that, because it's such a belief in me and I share little bits with, clients or whoever will listen, I think that's also partly where we're at right now on earth, is like really needing to remember that there's this other energy surrounding us all the time.
And I know you have an interest in the mediums like the Teresas and the Tyler Henrys and these other people. Is this like are these acquired skills, or are these folks born with this capability, or maybe it's a little bit of both? Like, what do you think?
Yeah.
On
I mean, I'm no expert in this, but I think the big ones that everyone, if like the names we just named, and I just spent time with Laura Lynn Jackson, who wrote the book Signs. And so these big ones, a lot of times I think they do have family members. And so it is a little bit of, like I mentioned, this inherited genetic thing that they didn't necessarily know about till it was time. And then mom's like, well, I've been meaning to tell you something, like your grandmother was a medium, or your grandmother had these powers or whatever. But also you can harness your own abilities to channel. Just everyone has different gifts and different, volumes of that. And there's plenty of books and podcasts and courses and things where you can like learn to become a psychic medium. But I think it's more of life will kind of strike you, not with lightning, but kind of like that thing where a point in time might come where someone is cracked open and has those abilities. Cause I've heard of those too, where it's not like those gifts were online for a while until wham, something happened, or whether they have like a near death experience or like they're faced with something where it's like God itself. And then they might all of a sudden become a medium. Or I have a friend who's been doing more of, she was just calling it, I don't even remember, just healing and just intuitive stuff. And now she's picking up, it's just evolved because I think she's been practicing and just being immersed in this really intuitive, like she would close her eyes and just kind of channel for you things she was feeling. And now she's doing more mediumship. So I don't know enough about that, but I think it is something that it's like a muscle. You can totally, if you really wanted to, I know you could learn how to not only connect with your loved ones or your guides for sure, but to become more of a medium, I think we each can do it. It would just take some heavier lifting or, a divine intervention of sorts, I think. Yeah.
your clients that are coming to you that have grief and need help with processing the grief. Is that something that, how does that feel for you? Is it like too much for you? Are you very sensitive to it? Is this something that you feel like you're here to help people move through grief? Where are you at with helping people with grief?
Yeah, I think until we had our dad stuff come up, I didn't really know what grief was in that specific emotional, like raw feeling that I now know. And just like anything, I know I'm a teacher, like that's partly what I'm put here to do. Like I don't just want to guide you through life. I want to teach you things so you can feel empowered. And, to be just a guide, again, not wrong, but I'm realizing now, and anything that I do, I get to where I want to teach. And go figure, my mom was a teacher and I thought I wanted to be a school teacher. So when it comes to grief, I do feel like because I have now lived it, I do want to teach people who are ready for it. I don't feel totally raw and triggered by it. I mean, grief can be a lot of things too. Grief is just that deep, raw, kind of feels a little low, but for me, it's also very like alive and here. And I remember during the pandemic, I saw some people that I like to learn from, and they were saying, you need to mourn and grieve the things that didn't happen. And so it's not just about loss like death, though we can look at it all as quote death, and we need death cycles and things to end, but people may not realize that they need to grieve like an old part of themselves or an old chapter of their life or an old version of themselves. So I have yet to have anyone honestly come to me with like facing death, but I also know that it's coming because we haven't seen a lot of our friends lose parents, but I also feel like there's some initiation of that for me, that I will now be a resource for people to help them move through that. And I do feel okay doing that because it feels partly the gift of it. I know I was bugged more by people when dad passed of hanging out in that like dead dads club and saying it just like real sorrowfully and just full of sadness. And that's real. I mean, I had a bunch of sadness this morning, but it doesn't stick around. And so really whoever's ready for letting grief move through them versus letting it live inside of them type of thing, I'm there for that. But it was, there probably could be certain things that I wouldn't necessarily feel good doing. But right now I just try to look at it more as like an emotion. And sometimes I don't need the story. I just want people to feel the grief and I can help them move that through their body.
Mm.
I'm not a counselor. So if they need help psychologically, I know pretty quickly, and I've learned the hard way, just be like, I'm not a psychologist. You might need to speak to someone else if you need to break down all of this, but I'm here to help you somatically shift this out of you. So yeah, I mean, grief, I'm sure more grief is coming. And I'd interviewed a gal on my podcast shortly after the dad stuff, and she introduced the term grief letting to me and also really helped me understand just her angle on it. And some of the things she was saying, just I've used with clients of just thinking of it as emotion. And if you haven't cried in a while and you feel like there's just something that needs to like come through, maybe in the form of tears or laughter, like they can be very equal in that dischargey way. Like put on a movie that is going to make you cry, or like put a sad song on. And so to on purpose play something that's going to invoke that, and that is the grief letting. And so you can start to just let that emotion move out. And that's really what's most important, because the emotional, heaviness that we hang out inside, that's how we get sick and all the other stuff.
So you have the yoga, you have the coaching, the somatic experiencing. You also have a long tenured podcast now. Tell me about the podcast and the evolution of that, and what are you hoping for the podcast for this year?
Yeah. The Modern Mindfulness podcast, circa 2019. So 2016, I ran a summit, Modern Mindfulness, like pinged in. I remember the coaching group mastermind I was in, this lady's like, that is so good. Like you need to do stuff with that. And so that was like just it. I knew it would be the Modern Mindfulness podcast. And my friend Erica, I always give her a shout out when this comes up because she was on it. I wish I would have listened to her a little sooner. I think my very first episode, I say this. But anyway, podcasting was so new back then in like 2017. She's like, you should do this. You'd be so good at it. And so finally I heard her and I started it. And I have around 111, I think, 112, which some podcasts that have just started last year have like 300. But I've just always let it be something that I like to do and want to do, and people that I really believe in. There's only maybe one guest I can think of that I was like, I wish I wouldn't have had her on there. It was when I was early on. There's some interviews and it was sort of like, didn't feel as yes. But otherwise, I don't know if vetting the people is the term, but I want to make sure that there's this quality. And I know you believe in that too with this one. I aim to bring in people that are living their practices or have lived an experience, or they're using the ancient practices like in a very embodied way, whether it's meditation, acupuncture, some sort of holistic this and that, yoga, whatever, tapping, ways to do energy work and just other ancient things that are very needed right now. So that's the common thread. And mindfulness is a word that sometimes my little inner critic or voice of worthiness is like, you can't use that word. You're not like John Kabat-Zinn, like mindfulness master. But in a way, maybe I am. And the word, though, mindfulness is just to be aware of things. So when I'm holding this modern mindfulness space, like just being aware of whatever the topic is, and typically asking the guest to share, like, why is this important right now for us in our modern world? And so bringing in like that teaching element and bringing in that, hopefully one like really tangible, embodied, depth thing for everybody. So it's been fun. I do some solo casts. We do some relationship riffs. But I'd love to see it grow. It's definitely becoming a chapter of my life where I want to just sit in a studio like this or sit at home and do virtual sessions with people and do the coaching. I love the virtual work. And part of it's because I love the accessibility of it. I love getting to work with people everywhere. None of my clients are right here, right now. And I love that. And I also enjoy the boundary, I think, for both. I think while touch is important and in person is important, I think the podcast also transmits this energy of just like being able to feel, I get to feel really comfortable in my place and share some really profound stuff too. So I'd love to see the podcast grow. I'd love to let it be the thing that I do alongside some of these other virtual offerings. And yeah, I've got some really cool interviews just on the docket, ready to be released. And it's really cool to also see who just shows up. And I'm getting emails weekly of people, and this is just how the podcast world works, but there's some really amazing people out there that have just been directed my way. And so I've been really fortunate to not have to put any effort into finding guests and just doing it when it feels right, putting the right amount of energy into it. But
so if somebody wanted to listen to a couple episodes, do you have a couple of favorites to point them to?
That's a tough one.
It can't be mine either. It can.
Well, the initial one with John is, I think, still one of the top. It might be the top 3 now in terms of downloads.
People are just nosy. They want to find out about this guy.
It's true. Well, I mean, honestly, if you scroll through the titles, just go towards the one you're pulled towards, because again, these are all so intentional. Like, I just think they're all so great in their own way. And there really is something for everybody. I know people say that all the time, but I just feel like it's true. And yeah, it's hard to name a favorite, and I'll have people tell me that just random ones were so good for them, and I would be surprised, but it's like not a single one has really been the number one.
So you offer the remote coaching sessions. What's, if somebody's listening right now, who's somebody that, what could be somebody's current situation that might be a good fit to reach out to you to chat about potentially working together? Where are they at in their life? Maybe they're going through something, or maybe they're on the brink, or something like that. Who's your ideal person sitting there that you want to kind of nudge to get a hold of you?
Well, the short answer is that if you're feeling like I can help you, I probably can. And I think that's such a special message I've gotten from people through the years. It doesn't always pan out though. So I know that I do need to like start to say, hey, I help you with this. However, people start to get just that little flavor of in their gut, in their heart, in their knowing, like I can help them. And so we start there. More specifically, some of the things I've named today of just knowing like there's something that you're ready for. We can live in victim mode. We can live in like, I want something, but I'd rather just complain about it and sit and swirl in it. And so those are not the people that I help. Seems like the people I'm chatting with, like they just feel it. They don't know what to do next, but they are ready for more. And a lot of times these are people who are people pleasers. They're very exhausted by now, and they may not know why. They're feeling very overwhelmed by life. They may not know why. They're feeling a lack of clarity. like they feel that they want more and they're ready for more, whether it's in a career thing, a personal relationship, friendships, any dynamics in life. Like I'm ready for more, but that's where I can come in because there's something stuck that we can start to just move somatically through conversation to start. And a lot of times too, it's people with voice, whether they literally know that they get lumps in their throat and it's hard for them to speak up, or also just self-express in general. So people that are still feeling a little blah, a little stuck, feeling like, what about me? But who am I to say that? Because everyone else matters more than me. And that's not true. So those are the folks that I tend to help most directly at the moment.
And what does it look like to work with you? They fill out a form or they get on a call with you? What's the process like?
Yeah, I mean, some people are just ready to go and they want to dive right in, and we can definitely start. I have a Google form that is sort of an application of sorts where there's just some backstory you can chime in on if you're ready. That's where you start. But if people want to chat, every once in a while, I have some blocks of time, and I'm always willing to find, 15 minutes or so if people are just wondering if I really am the right fit for them and vice versa. So it's all on my website and we can put all that stuff below. But then, yeah, it's virtual calls and it just depends on what people need. I've been known to go way over in my time, as you know, but less is more. So it just depends on where the person's at and how much conversational intuitive coaching we're doing versus actual somatic experiencing. Some people need me to meditate with them. And so some stuff may take longer and I just kind of gauge it per person and per need. But the somatic experiencing work specifically, I'm starting to offer just that. And those sessions are under an hour. And it's really powerful to have a little shorter session and get a lot more out of it.
Okay. So we got the Modern Mindfulness podcast. We're all friends here, everybody that listens. So follow Rebekka on Instagram. I think it's just Rebekka Mars, right?
Yeah. Currently it's Rebekka.Mars. Yeah.
.Mars. Okay. Glad I clarified. With 2 Ks.
Yeah.
2 Ks. And then the website is RebekkaMars.com.
Yeah.
And I'll put all this in the notes.
Well, I'll just say that I'm very honored to be on the PCP podcast, and I'm very proud of your creation of it. And nothing you do is a quick reactive thing. So this has been brewing for a while, and you're one of the chillest, if not the chillest people I know. So no one better to launch the Pretty Chill podcast to the world.
Well, thank you very much. And what's your chill meter at? How did that go? Are you feeling chill? Are you feeling a little thawed? Are you feeling hot and spicy? What's the chill meter? And for the record, ideal is pretty chill.
I was just going to say pretty chill.
Great. That's ideal.
Yeah.
All right, y'all. That's a wrap for this episode. Thank you, Rebekka, for joining me. That was great. And I'm sure you'll be in season 2 and 3
I hope.
and 4. If the people want you back, it's going to be a voting system. No, I was just kidding. You'll be back. All right, that's it. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll see you in the next one. Peace.
Bye.